Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, welcome to PMP Live. My name is Carolyn, and I'm an events coordinator in the Children and Teens Department at Politics and Prose. We are excited and honored to welcome Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton to read and discuss their very first picture book together, Grandma's Gardens. Even though our guests need no introduction, I'd like to welcome Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton. Secretary Clinton is the first woman in U.S. history to become the presidential nominee of a major political party. She has served as Secretary of State, First Lady, and Senator. She is the author of It Takes a Village, What Happened, Hard Choices, Living History, and, with Chelsea Clinton, the Book of Gutsy Women. Chelsea Clinton is a public health advocate, adjunct professor, and vice chair of the Clinton Foundation, where she works on many initiatives, including ones aimed at empowering the next generation of civic and world leaders. In addition, she is a prolific children's author with books including Don't Let Them Disappear, She Persisted Around the World, It's Your World, and with Debbie Sridhar, Governing Global Health. In just a few minutes, Secretary Clinton and Chelsea will read Grandma's Garden. After they read, Lissa Muscatine will join them in conversation, including asking questions that many of you submitted when you registered for the event. Lissa is the co-owner of Politics and Prose, former chief speechwriter for First Lady and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and author of the forthcoming book, Hillaryland. Please note that if you would like to purchase an additional copy of Grandma's Gardens, which will come with a signed book plate, you will find a link in the chat window shortly. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Mom.
Hi, honey. Hello, everybody. It's so great to be with all of you. We love Politics and Prose and have been looking forward to joining you. And we're going to read Grandma's Gardens together, alternating back and forth. So, Chelsea, you want to start?
Sure. So, Grandma Dorothy loved gardens. She loved the flowers. She loved the trees. She loved the animals that lived in the dirt and between the plants. And she loved the time she spent there with us. Because of Grandma Dorothy, we love gardens too. I remember dancing across the lawn with sparklers in each hand.
I remember cutting up the tomatoes we had just picked for our 4th of July lunch. Gardens are places of celebration.
I remember being so proud that Grandma asked me to help her care for the azaleas.
I don't know whether Chelsea or my mom loved gardening together more. Gardens help teach responsibility.
When my grandma talked about the gardens she visited in Morocco, she made me want to visit them too.
I loved that my mom had adventures later in life and that her adventures included beautiful gardens. Gardens are places of discovery.
I loved reading with my grandmother on her porch next to her sunflowers while listening to the animals in the nearby zoo.
They often would read the same book for their book club of 2 or 3 when we all read together. Gardens are places for learning.
In Arkansas and Washington, D.C., we spent lots of time at the zoo, and my grandmother always pointed out the trees and plants the animals were sitting under, swinging on, or eating.
I always appreciated my mom teaching Chelsea how dependent her favorite animals were on nature, whether they were caterpillars in the backyard or pandas at the zoo. Gardens are home to creatures large and small.
I loved listening to my mom and grandma talk about all the places in the world where our food comes from, including our own backyard.
As a little girl, I remember my mom explaining that some of my favorite foods, like peaches, were so special because they grew only during the summer months. Gardens give us food.
When my grandma moved in with my parents, I loved visiting them and listening to my mom and grandma talk about the newest additions to their garden.
Once we were living together, my mom and I spent even more time planning our garden, picking out and tending to the plants, trees, and flowers, and watching the birds. Gardens are where we can create beauty.
When I saw my grandma, I loved showing her pictures of the gardens I'd visited. When I could, I would bring souvenir books of the gardens to share. My grandma's smile made the heavy suitcase worth it.
As I traveled around the world, I always tried to store up the images of the gardens, plants, and trees that I'd seen to share with my mom. I loved sharing my memories with her. Gardens are places to share stories.
My grandma gardened into her 90s. She knew it was good for her, but that's not why she did it. She did it because she loved it.
Watching my mom enjoying our garden and tending to it gave me as much joy as it gave to her. Gardens help us stay strong.
On a particularly magical day, my grandma and I visited Mount Vernon, George Washington's home and gardens. I wish we could have visited more gardens together.
My mom and I would go to historic Dumbarton Oaks near our home in Washington, D.C., to wander around the gardens and learn more about the family who had lived there. I wish we could have visited more gardens together. Gardens are places to create memories.
My children now garden with their grandmother, and I know Grandma Dorothy is present every time we plant a vegetable or water a flower.
I feel particularly close to my mom when explaining how to use a small shovel, how deep to plant a seed, how much water a plant truly needs. Gardens connect us across generations.
My grandmother was always willing to play tag with me, throw a ball around, play hide and seek in the garden. I think she had as much fun as I did.
Today, watching my grandchildren race across the lawn, run around the trees, and smell the flowers makes my heart smile. Gardens are places to remember.
Our beloved Grandma Dorothy believed in gratitude, in being thankful for what we've been given and working to expand our circle of blessings. We are so grateful she shared her love of gardens with us, and we can share the love she gave us with the next generation. What do you share with the people you love?
And this book that Chelsea and I did together, really in honor of my mother and our love of gardening, is dedicated to grandmothers, grandchildren, and gardeners everywhere.
And thank you for letting us share our love of gardens and our love of my grandmother and our book with all of you. So thank you. And I think now hopefully Lissa will join us.
And gardens are places where love grows. There. Hi, Lissa.
Hi, well, thank you both. We are getting used to having you separately, together. We love every time you do an event with us. So thank you so much, both of you, for doing this with us. And what a beautiful book. I hope people could see the illustrations. If they haven't looked at the book yet, they're going to be blown away. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I just want to say, I think it's so, it's such an important book right now. The messages you'll see from some of the questions that we've gotten from the audience, I think it's going to resonate so much for people. So thank you for that also. My first question though, sorry, go ahead, Chelsea.
I do want to give a shout out to the illustrator, to Carme, who I just think, since you mentioned the illustrations, we looked at so many possible kind of illustrators and people to partner with, and we saw these beautiful illustrations that Carme had done of sunflowers, and we just kind of fell in love with her aesthetic and her work, and are just so thankful that she kind of gave her talents and her energy and her beauty to this project. And I think I now couldn't imagine it without her. So since you mentioned her, I just wanted to kind of give her a more proper and long kind of shout out and moment of gratitude.
And totally deserved, and just truly captured the spirit of the book. So no, I'm glad you mentioned that, Chelsea. My first not terribly serious question to you as of reading this book is, could you come to my house and help me with my garden, please? Because my eggplants and peppers right now are not doing so well. And my daughter and I actually planted this garden together. We have a vegetable garden in our backyard. So, but we need a little work in a couple of areas. Other things are doing very well, I want to say. So I was lucky enough to know your mom, Secretary Clinton, know your grandma, Chelsea, a little bit. And I still carry with me, believe it or not, some very choice pieces of advice and wisdom she passed on to me at various points that I just thought she was the wisest person ever. And she was such an extraordinary person. And Chelsea, you obviously gardened with your grandmother, you read with your grandmother, you took trips with your grandmother, and you just mentioned this touching moment where you went to Mount Vernon when she was older to take her to those gardens. What was it about your grandma Dorothy that just was unique and special for you as a grandchild?
Oh, well, Lisa, I think about my grandmother every day and talk about her. So my children know Grandma Dorothy. So they kind of talk about like Grandma Dorothy would really like it when we're gardening, or do you think Grandma Dorothy would have liked this book? Admittedly, they're very into superheroes right now. So a lot of the specific questions are like, did Grandma Dorothy like Wonder Woman? And I'm like, yes, Grandma Dorothy liked Wonder Woman.
Sure.
Yeah, don't worry. We got you covered on that one. She was so, you talked about her being wise, Lisa, and that's the way I always felt. She was so wise, and she was also so warm. She gave like both the best hugs, but also the best advice. And yet she pulled no punches. Like you always knew exactly kind of where she stood on all things. And she was very happy both to kind of give advice when asked and even when kind of not asked. So I tried to talk to her every day, and I would call her at different points in the day, partly because she told me it was kind of fun for her to hear from me at different points in the day, and also admittedly just like when I had time in the day. And sometimes I would call and she would say like, I'm watching your mom on C-SPAN, and she would just hang up. So it wasn't only the advice that kind of came with great candor, it was just sort of her general way of engaging the world. And just that like she continued to be curious about the world into her 90s, and that she always wanted to kind of learn about different people and places. And she was like such a voracious reader, and she wanted to not only talk, but really listen to anyone and kind of everyone. And I just learned so much from her kind of in those specific pieces of advice, Liz, that you mentioned, but also just in like how she led her life and how she engaged in the world.
She was one of the most incredibly self-educated people I think I've ever met, for sure. And now transferring to her daughter, your mom, I think arguably maybe this is pre-Chelsea, was the most influential person to you in your life as a human being, as a public servant. I'm sure as a mother and a grandmother. And her life story was such an inspiration and has been such an inspiration to you. So if people, I'm sure there are people who don't really know about your mom, Secretary Clinton, can you just tell us a little bit about her own childhood and what she went through growing up that had such a profound influence on you? Uh-oh, we lost you for a sec there. Oh no.
Well, I can talk a little bit about my grandmother and then leave my mom to kind of chime in, Lisa. I coughed because I have terrible allergies. I hope somehow my coughing didn't like reverberate, through cyberspace and somehow knock my mom off of the webinar. My grandmother was born to teenage parents who were not ready to be parents, and her mother certainly had no interest, sadly, in being a mom. And she was abandoned multiple times by her parents. And then finally, when she was 8, put on a train from Chicago to Los Angeles by her dad to live with his parents. And they were not kind of warm or welcoming either. And so when she was 13, right before her 14th birthday, her grandparents told her she had to go out and support herself. So she got a job, as she said, as a mother's helper. Kind of today, what we would probably call it au pair or a nanny, and also as a housekeeper. And so she, worked in someone else's home, taking care of someone else's children, and she herself was still a child. And yet she still got herself to school every day, was on the honor roll, and never doubted that she could be kind of more than what was expected of her. And also never doubted that she could create a home full of love and possibility, even though that hadn't been her own experience. I just think it is really extraordinary that she kind of imagined a different and a better life for herself. And then she went about creating it and living it.
And passed it on to her kids and her daughter and to her granddaughter as well. I mean, it's a remarkable journey that she had and has had such an influence on all of you. Chelsea, I just was wondering, Carolyn mentioned in introducing you, you've written a lot of books, and so many of your books for kids have, they're very intentional. They have a purpose. And a lot of that purpose is to have kids imagine their own engagement with the world and the things they can have an impact on, and the environment, the natural world, animals, and just the safety of the planet in particular, and public health, obviously. And I'm just wondering to what extent your grandmother infused you with those kinds of values as well. Because obviously, and interestingly, we had some questions from people who were surprised that gardens were such a dominant part of your story and your mom's story and your grandma's story. And in a nice way, they found this kind of an interesting thing that maybe was just a private thing among you. And now it's, you're bringing it to people. But to what extent was your grandmother and her love of gardens and the outdoors and the natural world, do you think that infused in you or animated this in you?
Totally. I mean, so my grandparents moved to Little Rock in 1987, right before Christmas, or at least that's how I remember it, kind of being the best Christmas present in the world. It could have admittedly been October, but I have always loved Christmas. So kind of Christmas seems to start right after school for me in my kind of calendar mind. So, but it feels like right before Christmas. And the reason that is related to your story, Lissa, is my grandmother told me that year she wanted for Christmas to kind of give me a membership. This was back when you would actually join organizations and you would get newsletters in the mail, and that was really exciting because I loved mail as a kid. I loved getting mail. I loved sending mail. I thought mail was just the coolest thing ever. And the fact that my grandmother wanted me to be part of an organization was so exciting to me. And I don't remember the order because this happened then for a few years, but one year I joined the World Wildlife Fund, and one year it was Greenpeace, and one year it was Conservation International. And we would I have these vivid memories of reading these newsletters, with updates on their programs of what they were doing to really help save the natural world and help preserve nature and fight climate change and all these things, sadly, that we still have to do now, more than 30 years later. And I just have these treasured memories of talking to my grandmother about what we could do to try to help save the planet and take care of literally the plot of land where she was growing herbs or vegetables or flowers, and how kind of absolutely was that all felt very connected to her because it of course was very connected, and she helped me understand that as a kid.
Yeah, that's so great, isn't it? I mean, what a nice thing. And now this book in her honor about all of this is such a lovely tribute. Until your mom comes back, I want to just go through some questions.
I'm back.
You're back? Oh, where are you? I don't see you.
Oh, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you are. Okay, great. Okay, so Chelsea just stood in for you and gave some very excellent answers to questions.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to go to some audience questions. There were sort of themes. There were groups of questions that were essentially about some of the same things. So I'm going to try to consolidate the questions and pick one as representative. So the first one is from Anna and Caleb in Lexington, Massachusetts. Anna is 8 and Caleb is 6. And this is a question that echoes lots of other people's question. And they wanted to know, what was it like collaborating as a mother and daughter writing the book?
Oh, Anna and Caleb, that's one of my favorite questions because Chelsea and I have written 2 books together. One called the Book of Gutsy Women, and then of course, Grandma's Gardens. So it's been an incredibly good experience, but I have to be honest and say that it was a lot easier on Grandma's Gardens because we had a very clear idea of what we wanted to write and how we wanted to honor my mother and how important gardening was to her and therefore to us. But on the Book of Gutsy Women, it was more complicated because we had to write all these essays about women that we thought were gutsy. And we had different ideas and we had different ways of approaching it. And that turned out to be an incredibly interesting, but somewhat more challenging experience between the two of us. So it's been fun. And I really have loved working with Chelsea. I hope that we'll do more things together in the future.
Chelsea, how about for you?
I would say, I'd echo to my mom that it was, especially meaningful, I think, to work on Grandma's Gardens together because clearly it was about like my grandmother and my mom's mom. And so one of the great joys was just like thinking of all these memories and like, and just remembering like all these treasured moments with my grandmother, so many of which took place like outside and in gardens or, my grandmother loved tennis. So I have these vivid memories when I was little of her like playing tennis or her like watching my softball games. I was not very good at softball, tried really hard. And she always cheered super loudly. And so like all of these wonderful memories we had outdoors, so many around gardens, but also like beyond gardens. And then of course, just like all the times that we like laughed together, or she loved Elizabeth Taylor, like all the times we watched Elizabeth Taylor movies together. So just like this flood of memories. So it was fun to work with my mom, but it was especially meaningful to do this project with her because of like our many moments of being able to kind of remember and smile and be grateful for all that my grandmother gave us.
I have a feeling this will not be the last book you do together.
I hope not. Yeah.
Okay, moving on to Olive, who's 8 years old, and her question is, what is your favorite thing to grow in your garden?
Oh, Olive, that's such a good question. I'll tell you what we're growing right now, Olive. And my grandchildren, Charlotte and Aiden, and not Jasper, he's only a year old, but the two older ones helped me plant the garden as they have for the last 3 years. So this year we had absolutely fabulous lettuce of every kind you can imagine. We had really good green onions that were especially tasty. The peppers are starting to be pretty good. So Lisa, I can offer some hints to you about the peppers.
Thank you.
Some animal of some sort ate the broccoli, which we were trying for the first time. So we didn't get any broccoli. Ate the spinach, which we also didn't get. We got kale, but it seems really too bitter. For the first time, we grew snap peas, and yeah, those went everywhere. They were like Jack and the Beanstalk, and they were pretty good. And we are growing corn, which we have no idea if it's going to work or not, because it's not exactly, a cornfield in Iowa. It's a pretty small space, but we're trying to do that. And of course, we just got our first tomatoes. So we have chives, we have rosemary, we have basil, we have mint. We have, we just have a real vegetable garden. And then our flower garden is, just multicolored and, wonderful to look at. And we cut the flowers and, bring them inside. So, but it's the vegetable garden that we've worked really hard on.
Well, and I would say we also have carrots, which our kids and radishes, which our kids are super excited about this because they love the Peter Rabbit stories. And so they really like leaving tiny little bit. And there are rabbits.
Lots of rabbits.
There are lots of rabbits in my parents' backyard that we see. And so they have tried to feed them a couple times. That has not been successful. Like the rabbits run away from them. They're smart rabbits. And my children are like very good kids. And of course I'm biased, but they're really good kids, but they don't know their own strength. So like the rabbits know they should be like, hopping up and away, but they leave like the carrots and the radishes out in the hopes that the rabbits. Now, of course, I think candidly, it's probably the raccoons that like eat them, but at least like they're trying to like nurture the local rabbits. So I think they would probably say those are their favorite vegetables because they're the ones they think that the rabbits eat, even though I'm convinced it's actually the raccoons who probably eat them.
Well, I think next time you're back, you're going to have a farm stand also that you're selling. So many.
If we stay in quarantine, that may be what we're going to have to do. I'm telling you.
Sounds like an incredible array. It's great. Okay, here is a great question. I love this question. You've sort of touched on it, but Ginger Angel wants to know, other than gardening, what's another thing you love together? And she adds, thank you both for writing this awesome book.
Oh, thank you so much, Ginger. Well, we like a lot of things. We like reading together. We like introducing our grandchildren to a certain select number of movies that are okay for them to see. We like going on walks. We like going swimming. You know, we just really are trying to enjoy the summer as much as possible.
We love games.
Yeah.
So we love games. We love puzzles. So we probably do as much of that as anything, because on rainy days or on days when it's very hot. So we love game Rat-a-tat-cat, which like wasn't around when I was a kid, or Sleeping Queens, which wasn't around when I was a kid. They also love like Gin Rummy and War, which I played a lot with my parents and my grandmother when I was a kid. And they love puzzles, which is so fun because I also love puzzles. So I just am so happy that we kind of get to do this together.
And we cook. We try to cook together.
Oh,
We
nice.
cook, bake. I definitely, we had made like every possible iteration that I could think of with like banana and zucchini bread in the first month of quarantine, and then have like tried to expand out into other baked goods. So I'm excited as the garden continues to develop that there'll be even more for us to cook and bake with.
And have any of your kids inherited the New York Times crossword puzzle gene from your dad?
Yes, Aiden has.
Aiden is like really into like, but his spelling is still, you know, he's 4. So it is like, listen, he loves like word games, but we also have to work on like, don't get frustrated because he doesn't, you know, sometimes understand that like a word that he thinks should be spelled with a Z is actually spelled with an S. But like, that's really fun too, to kind of help him navigate all of that and help him not get frustrated and just kind of keep persisting.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, I was telling your mom, Chelsea, that earlier that we have a lot of questions related to the pandemic. And it's both sort of touching, but also sad to me in the sense that people are so yearning for guidance and understanding and compassion and caring and wisdom about all of this. And I just have to say, as a sort of editorial comment for everybody who's listening, when I worked in the White House for then First Lady Hillary Clinton, and even through until she was Secretary of State, and that includes when she was in the Senate, she was one of the lone voices out there from 25 years ago talking about the threat of global pandemics. You were talking about it a long time ago. And if only more people, and I'm not going to name any names in particular, had listened, you know, we would not be where we are today. But yet here we are in this awful place right now, in this crisis. And so many people are really looking to both of you for advice from how to help kids get through this pandemic. How can we all help each other? How can we nurture relationships when we can't be together? So I want to start with one question, and this is from Lucy, who's 9. And she wrote in, I'm sad I can't see my Mimi, grandma, because of coronavirus. Do you have any ideas for ways we can connect?
Oh, well, let me start as the grandmother side of that, and then Chelsea can talk a little bit about it too, Mimi. You know, I'm very lucky because we get to be together. After we quarantined, we have been, you know, together, and we've been really, really careful about not going anywhere, and the people that we see, and just everything we can do to stay safe. And I think it's really important for you to communicate with your grandma, with your Mimi, on Zoom, on FaceTime, on the telephone. You know, it's important to maybe read a book together, or do a puzzle together, do something that you can, you know, interact with, even though it's virtual. She's not actually there with you. And I really think that could help. also, write letters to each other. Chelsea was talking about how much she loved getting letters. Well, letters or emails or texts, just, staying in touch so that you can stay as connected as possible until you can see her again.
And, Mimi, I would just say, an echo to my mom, and my husband is one of 11 kids, and we have not been able to see my in-laws. I mean, my kids haven't seen their aunts or uncles or cousins, in 4.5 months. And so we do spend lots of time on Zoom and FaceTime with our family, kind of trying to stay as connected as possible in this time that we're also staying apart. And we found, especially for kind of, I don't know how old you are, but for Charlotte and Aiden, our 5 and 4-year-olds, like, it's really fun for them when they're reading the same books as their cousins, and then they can talk about those books together. Or they love octonauts, like, because they're super into just animals and the ocean. And so kind of when they can talk about like a show that they're watching with their cousins. And just to also, the last thing I'll say is to really underscore what my mom was saying. They love getting mail. And so they also understand to get mail, they have to like send mail. So we've written a few letters to really their cousins, and also to their Nana, which is what they call their grandma on my husband's side, my husband's mom. And so I hope that those things that we're doing are helping them stay connected. I think they are. It's certainly no substitute for being together, but we think it's a lot better than nothing. So I hope that maybe kind of those things can help you too.
What great ideas. Those are all sound so lovely in this situation. And I had one more, I wanted to have one more pandemic related question. This is an adult question, but it also summed up a lot of what many people wrote in, and it's from Jean On, and who says, how do you plant, nice metaphors, how do you plant and cultivate hope in an environment of chaos and growing despair? What are tangible, and you've just talked about some of them, but what are tangible steps and actions that have worked for both of you to move forward and maintain a positive outlook?
Well, Jean, we do try to stay busy every day. And we've talked about some of the things we do. We try to get exercise outside. I go for really long walks because I find that incredibly calming and helpful. We go swimming. We are, doing everything we can to stay active, keep our minds active, our bodies active. I also do a lot of reading and some writing and other work that I continue to do. But I also would underscore how I try to think of every way I can to help people running for office who I think will be better leaders, better stewards of our country or our state or city. Obviously, I'm working very hard for Joe Biden, but also people running for the Senate or for the House. So I try to be as active as I can in doing what we must do over the next months to try to have a different outcome in the election.
And, for me, I think a lot about something that one of my kind of friends and people I really admire, Jim Kim, who is the president of the World Bank, said that optimism is a moral choice. Right? That we can choose to be optimistic, to believe that our energies and our efforts, our actions really can hopefully create a better tomorrow. And whether that's kind of in the world defined as our family or community or kind of the globe. And so I think about that a lot. And for me, I spend a lot of time with my kids, and I'm incredibly grateful to do so. And also, as my mom said, try to stay busy, kind of helping kind of people that I think are doing really important work, kind of in every sphere, trying to help kind of support other authors, really, Lissa, who are helping kids, as we talked about earlier, kind of not be limited by kind of what they may see in front of themselves as what they believe to be possible for their kind of own lives and for our shared future. But I also let myself like feel that anger and sadness that I do deeply feel at this moment, you know, and to kind of live with those emotions. I've been angry like since January, basically, when it became pretty clear to me that the Trump administration was not kind of prepared and purposely not prepared to help protect our public health and Americans' lives from COVID-19. And so I don't kind of suffocate that anger. I just kind of try to ensure that that anger and sadness coexists along with kind of gratitude and hope and optimism, that we can have a different and a better and a healthier future.
Well, and you come to it from a vantage point of somebody who spent an awful lot of your life working on public health, on preserving and strengthening public health. So that must be especially hard to watch this.
It is hard. It is especially hard, I think, Lissa, because we see kind of what different leadership has made possible in different countries. I talk to my friends in kind of Scotland or Norway or Hong Kong, and like their kids are having play dates, right? Or back to school.
Sure.
They're seeing like their grandparents. They're going to parks and zoos and, living maybe somewhat kind of socially distanced lives, but still like fairly normal lives, and increasingly for kids, like very, very normal lives. So I know that it could be different because we're kind of living alongside examples of very real differences. So we just have to hopefully help people understand why leadership matters, especially in a public health crisis.
Exactly. Okay, so let's do a more fun question. Several people wanted to know about you both and the gardens in the White House, and did you have time in those gardens? So one person, Gabrielle, says, did you grow vegetables in the gardens during your time in the White House? And Jill says, did you get to work in the garden at the White House? And you also had your own little secret garden up on the top floor outside of a beautiful room called the Solarium, which I hope you'll talk about.
That's right. Well, that is where we grew vegetables.
Yeah.
We had pots up on the roof of the White House on the third floor, what Lissa has said was a room called the Solarium, and out the door you could be on the roof. And so we had big pots of tomatoes and peppers, primarily other, easier to grow vegetables. I didn't personally spend time in the formal gardens other than to consult with the full-time gardeners, to ask questions, to offer suggestions, or they would come to me to ask me about something. And I was really thrilled when Michelle Obama started an actual vegetable garden right in the midst of the White House gardens itself. That was something that, wasn't as welcome in the, in the 90s as thankfully it turned out to be in the last 10 or so years. But, being around the White House gardens and the beauty of those gardens, and especially the Rose Garden, but also the other garden through the east entrance called the First Lady Garden, which maybe people who have visited the White House have seen, gave me a chance to try different things. So it wasn't only flowers. We also had sculpture exhibits, and we tried to make full use of the gardens in every way that we could.
And I loved the kind of big pots, the big planters with the vegetables and the peppers, and it was definitely an exercise in patience, because I remember the first year my mom did that, I would go out often with my grandmother and every day look at them. And obviously not a lot had happened from day to day. But so much fun kind of watching the kind of rooftop garden grow. And also, Lissa, I was really lucky to spend time with the arborists at the White House, the people who took care of all the trees and who always answered my questions about not only the types of trees, but also kind of the history of the trees and who planted them and how long they've been there and kind of how they fit within like the whole ecosystem around the White House. So, so many fond memories of the trees as well as the gardens.
Well, and that must be something that you enjoy on your walks, right? And I wanted to say your walks with your dogs, very important in a pandemic, right? So here's a question from Jessie, which is and this is sort of related to an earlier question, but a little more specific, what has been the most difficult thing to grow in your garden?
You know, as I said, we really totally failed with broccoli and spinach this year. I am not optimistic about the corn. I don't think that's going to work.
Which really came from Charlotte. Charlotte was really excited about growing.
Charlotte loves, loves sweet corn. So I said we would try it. So we are trying it. And it's, it's nearly as high as the elephant's eye, but it doesn't look like it's going to produce much in the way of corn, ears. So yeah, those are the things that haven't worked out so well this year.
Yeah, well, you have sounds like it's the animal intrusions that were the bigger problem than, no green thumbs. But
the first year, Lissa, a few years ago, the first year Charlotte and Aiden helped Grandma plant a garden, the animals ate everything because there was no protection around it, which, I got this like frantic phone call from my dad one night. He's like, the garden's gone. Like, what do we do? And it was very sweet. My dad was like, don't worry, we'll replant everything. And I was like, no, this is a good lesson for them, right? Like, sometimes, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And sometimes you don't succeed because like, the rabbits, the raccoons, and the deer, like, thought it looked pretty delicious. So, we have had lots of, like, there's already a long history and only a few years of animal intrusions and like the garden that my kids and my mom kind of grow together. A little bit helped me.
Yeah, well, we finally enclosed ours for exactly those same creatures to protect from. So here's a question from Deborah LeVay. She says, this is a lovely question. You've talked about Dumbarton Oaks, you talked about Mount Vernon, but what are some of your favorite public gardens?
I like both, how can I say, very organized formal gardens, like the ones that I have seen in England and France and, in a few places, like the Biltmore and other places here in the United States. But I really love sort of English gardens. I love gardens that are just as wild as they can be, but they're still gardens. And so I like my garden at my house right now because it is just...
It's the only garden you can go to.
The only garden I can go to. So I'm trying to, really get the most out of it. We mentioned in the book, not only Mount Vernon, but also Dumbarton Oaks, which is, there in Washington. And I highly recommend that to anybody who wants a wonderful walk through a beautiful garden. We mentioned Morocco. My mother had a memorable trip to Morocco and got to visit some gardens inside private homes in big courtyards, and they were in, it's a dry climate, so it was different kinds of things. I love going to, estates and beautiful homes in different parts of the country to see what can be grown, like a garden in California when Chelsea was at Stanford, and we'd see what was grown there. And that's, your stomping grounds from Berkeley, Lissa, is very different than what I remember from a Midwestern garden or a rose garden. And, I just love the variety that people are able to, make happen wherever they happen to be planted themselves.
And I have to say, Lissa, the garden unquestionably where we've spent the most time, like the public garden where we spent the most time, are the Bronx Botanical Gardens, or the New York Botanical Gardens in Bronx. And I love, there's nothing against, I love the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens too, but the New York Botanical Gardens, like in the Bronx, like we love taking our kids there. It's like so sad. I think we were slated to go to see the orchid show when everything kind of shut down. Like we love going to see the holiday train show around Christmas. And we also just love like going and exploring the different gardens they have, kind of Japanese gardens and kind of gardens that have plants from the South American Southwest, and kind of more English gardens, and kind of plants native from across like sub-Saharan Africa. Like it's such a wonderful place because it is like truly, it feels like the world of kind of plant and flower and tree life, like in the heart of New York City. And it just feels like such a magical wonderland for our kids. So it is a place that we love going, and we've been to a lot, and we can't wait to go back to when it's safe to do so.
Well, it is incredible that there are these beautiful, huge oases in the middle of these dense urban settings, right? And how wonderful that you can participate in them. Okay, so I have a comment from somebody named Mary Gonzalez. This is unrelated to gardens, sort of. I guess it totally unrelated, but you could draw an inference. She says, "My wife became an American citizen just to be able to vote for you."
Oh, tell her thank you, and tell her to be sure to vote this next time too.
And then there's a fun question from Carrie, which is there a chance of Hillary and Bill collaborating on a book? I'd like to read something by both Presidents Clinton.
Oh. Well, I don't know. We haven't thought about that, but who knows? We're open for all kinds of new writing experiences.
Yeah, I mean, or Chelsea, you could write one with your dad.
Yeah.
I mean,
all three right
now. I mean, oh gosh, I don't know if all three of us, it would never get done probably, because
but the discussion around it would be really interesting.
It's right? Fascinating. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Let me just look. I had another question for you about, somebody wanted to know about the performing arts, which is also not related to gardens, but how do you ensure, because you're a great lover of the performing arts, both of you. And I mean, Chelsea, you were even a performer in the performing arts when you were a kid. You were a ballet dancer. And Secretary Clinton, you are doing an event soon with Lin-Manuel Miranda.
I am, yeah.
And so there's a question from somebody who teaches performing arts, and he wants to know what can you envision after this as being a way to protect and ensure that the arts stay alive? I hope you don't mind me throwing that question in, but it seemed pretty important.
It's really important, and I'm very worried about what's going to happen. A lot of the, smaller performing arts companies are really struggling, and the larger ones are as well, but of course they start from a deeper base of support. I hope that whatever the Congress comes up with for additional financial help will cover performing arts companies, venues, because we have to, provide support to get through this period because everybody's been laid off. All the performers have been laid off. Most of them are not getting paid right now. I want to hope that things can be back to normal, but I don't see that happening at the earliest before next spring. So I'm worried, and Chelsea's actually on the board of at least one performing arts institution, so she probably has even better understanding than I do about what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm on the board of the School of American Ballet because I do, as you know, love ballet and love kind of ballet schools, and just to echo so strongly what my mom said. And if we look at what's happened in Europe, especially in Germany, but also elsewhere, there has been public support for the arts, for both kind of artistic venues, theaters and concert halls, as well as performing arts companies, and also kind of performing arts and pre-professional schools. And I think we need all of that here, because I think we really, I think the arts are such an essential part of our country and kind of our kind of shared humanity. I think they're also going to be a really essential part of helping us understand what this whole experience has been, with kind of the grief and the pain and the inequity. And so we need, I know it's a cliche, but I do think we need our arts more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to be supporting them so that they can, candidly, so arts and artists can kind of be there with and for us, in the future.
Mm-hmm. So well put. We feel the same way about books, that this is going to help us tell the story and help people deal with this. and think about it and put it in context and imagine things in a better way. So I hope you are right that we can somehow support the performing arts and make sure that people understand the value, especially now, as you said. Here's a really interesting question. Do you have any plans of making a video of reading of this book for classroom use or for parents to teach their young children?
Actually, we did. We read it. I think Penguin, the publisher, has a video, and I think we can let you know, Lissa, how to get it downloaded so that kids and teachers and other people can see it.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm sure there'd be a great hunger for that. Can I just ask you one other question, though, that I meant to ask you earlier? That's a kind of related question. There's so much joy in the two of you talking about this book, and it was obviously such a joyful experience for you both to write it and to write it together. You obviously, I guess, didn't envision that it was going to come out in the midst of this, but was there anything specific about the timing and why you did it now? Or is it just sort of was the natural progression of what you both were working on?
It's just like, it just came out in the spring because it seemed to be a good time to have a book about gardens in the spring. And just unfortunately, this spring, we're living in a global pandemic.
Yeah.
Leadership on multiple levels, having nothing to do with gardens. But no, Lisa, it was just kind of the season, and because it was kind of it made sense given kind of we finished it, and Carme had lent her talents, thankfully, contributed her talents. But no, just because kind of spring seemed like a good season for a gardening book, and it seemed to kind of make sense as to when we would be able to share this and our love of gardening and our love of my grandmother kind of with the world.
But it was supposed to come out this spring, and of course we had a really jam-packed schedule, including coming to Politics and Prose and lots of other great bookstores. And I think, we went ahead, the publisher obviously went ahead and put it out. And I'm not sure in the very beginning, we realized that everything would be shut down the way it has been shut down. And we've been doing, Zoom events like this one about the book. It of course makes it more difficult to tell people about the book, for the book to, get much attention, but it seems especially appropriate because, everybody's looking for things to do. People are making all kinds of sourdough bread, and as Chelsea said, every kind of banana bread and zucchini bread. And I think when you're sort of searching for what can you do, even if you just have a pot, on the front or back porch or on a little balcony, especially if you have kids, growing something seems like one of the few things that we all can do, no matter where we are, to kind of get through this and to have that sense of optimism that you and Chelsea were talking about, that, yeah, guess what? We can still grow things. We can still, make a difference. And so it actually, turned out to make sense for the time in which we are living.
Well, and you couldn't have ever anticipated the extent to which the message of family connection and sharing with family, because so many questions just we had in this little hour have been about how to stay connected and how to feel those relationships that are so sometimes separate now. So believe it or not, we are just about out of time. So I have one last question. And Chelsea read the end of the book, you end with gratitude to Dorothy, to Grandma Dorothy, Mother Dorothy, for sharing her love of gardening with both of you. And I know anybody who's ever worked for Hillary Clinton knows that she is a great believer in the discipline of gratitude and the importance of gratitude in one's life. And that's one of the big things I have learned from you from many years ago. And at the end, and Chelsea read this question at the end of the book, you ask readers a question, which is, what do you share with the people you love? And I'm sure you want that question to linger so they can ponder that. But I thought maybe we could end this hour with each of you answering that same question for yourselves.
Well, I think, right now, Lisa, as this may seem kind of almost too kind of trite in this moment, but both Charlotte and Aiden have really learned to read in the last few months, like as we've been in quarantine together. And it is such like a joy to watch them like figure out how to read a word, and just like their whole little beings light up and they're so excited. And we have admittedly a sort of like a strike system. If they like don't behave well, they get one strike for this. There are certain things that are like automatic 3 strikes. And they know though that the one way they can try to like, earn back their strikes is by reading to their baby brother.
Ah.
So, I wish that they would just be motivated because they wanted to read to Jasper, but sometimes they are, but they're always motivated to try to, like get back the dessert that they've lost because they had a strike. That's what 1 strike means in our family. And so, like they're reading so much because they are a little bit naughty, but they're reading so much, especially to their baby brother. And so to watch like the 3 of them, even though I know Jasper, like he turns 1 tomorrow, like he's not reading, but like that to watch them share and kind of almost create this joy of reading together. And because we love to read in our family, obviously like what I kind of inherited from my parents, but also I married a great reader. My husband loves to read too. Is something we are deeply sharing at this moment and are so grateful that we are.
Can I just interject one thing? I remember, Chelsea, you showing me a photo, I think it was Charlotte, she was in a bathtub with books everywhere, and then there was one in her stroller with books. I mean, she was just surrounded by books. So she's obviously a clone of her parents and her grandparents. So, and you obviously like books. There's books in your background too.
So many books.
Yeah.
We are book people from the get-go. And what I love is any amount of time I get to spend during the day with any one or all of my grandchildren. And so we share conversations, we share books, we share going swimming, we share going on walks.
You're weaving with Charlotte. My mom has started weaving.
Let's not get carried away. This is like,
you have a loom.
I don't know, the farming, the weaving.
I mean,
yeah, it's so primitive. I mean, it took me like 3 weeks to make a pot holder. Let's not get carried away, but it is something that I thought Charlotte would get a kick out of, and she was, incredibly helpful and probably, more adept than her grandmother. But anything we can do, we share, and we love sharing. And we really, in the midst of all of this crazy, scary time, we find ourselves being able to, share with the people you love, whether it's in person or, as we talked earlier, virtually, to stay connected. That's the message of this book. Stay connected. The garden is a great way to be connected. There are other ways of doing it, but for people who haven't tried a garden or haven't tried to plant something with children, it's such a great way to be connected right now with each other. So we look for all kinds of things to do like that.
Well, one or two questions expressed surprise because they thought they knew everything about you, as most people do, which they don't, but whatever. But they were surprised. They didn't, not surprised in a bad way, but they didn't know about all of your love of gardening, your grandma's love of gardening. And so this book opened up a new sort of storyline that they appreciate. And I just think it's such a wonderful book, and the illustrations are great. And as I said, the joy comes through in the shared experiences and just the beauty of the natural world. I know, Chelsea, you're so committed to that in your life of advocacy, and both of you just always trying to bring a more joyful world to the rest of us, a more beautiful world to the rest of us. And this book is just the perfect book for this moment. I hope everybody who's watching, don't just get it for your own kids or your grandkids or yourselves, get it for your neighbors and other people. It's a book that really matters so much right now. It's beautiful. I don't know if you can see it. There it is. As we said, it comes with a signed bookplate, which is so special. And thank you for doing that. And as always, it's an honor. It's a joy to be with both of you. We love having you. And, for the next book, come back. For sure.
You know we will. Thank you so much, Listen. Thanks to everybody who tuned in.
Everyone,
And stay safe and stay well read.
Exactly. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.